Gute Woche. This afternoon, the Rebbe Gesundheit began to Farbrengen that we are in the middle of the days of Sphira. Sphira days are the days of preparation to Matan Torah, and that is when the Rebbe has chosen Yidden to be his nation, the Am Segula. This came as a result of Matan Torah. And prior to Matan Torah, there was the Indian of counting Sfiras HaEmer. And Sfiras HaEmer is a long continuation, or every day continues, is a continuation to the previous day, how we are preparing ourselves for Matan Torah. And that is why we say, Hayoim Shnei Yomim Lo'imer, Hayom Shloisha Yomim Lo'imer. You don't say Hayoim Yom Sheni. What is the difference if you would say Hayoim Yom Sheni or Hayoim Shnei Yomim Lo'imer? Hayoim Yom Sheni would mean today is the second day, but this second day has no continuation to the first day. Shnei Yomim is we have already accomplished 2 days. There is the accomplishment of day 1, and after that is accomplishment of day 2. In other words, it's one long continuity, the whole concept of Sfiras HaEmer. And that is why says the Rebbe that there is a discussion in Peiskim where an opinion is brought up that the entire Sfiras HaEmer should only have one bracha. We don't follow this opinion. We make a bracha every day separately. However, there is such an opinion. And on the other hand, we can see that should one forget, Bechlal people don't forget, and most people we put on the Cheskas Kashros that everybody doesn't skip and everybody counts a full Sfiras HaEmer. But should it happen when a person does forget to count Sfiras HaEmer, and then the next day he can not make a bracha on it? What does this show us? This shows us that it is one unit, the entire concept of Sfiras HaEmer. And this entire concept of Sfiras HaEmer is a preparation for Matan Torah. And the Indian of Matan Torah is not something which is limited to a certain time of the year. It's really something which we live with the entire year. The entire year we take the Indian of Matan Torah with us. So Mamela, the lessons and the Inyanim that have a shaykhs that relate to Sfiras HaEmer are also Inyanim that are not just for the Sfiras HaEmer days, but it's something which has a shaykhs to the entire year. And specifically regarding Sfiras HaEmer, the days of Sfiras HaEmer, these are the days when the disciples of Rabbi Akiva passed away. And the lesson of all that is that the reason for it was that Lo Nohgu Kavod Zeh B'Zeh, they did not respect properly one another. And the lesson from it is the proper Avos Yisrael, which is supposed to be in existence between one Yid and another. And here the Rebbe went into a lengthy explanation where the Rebbe brings out that there is nothing wrong when people have differences in opinion. Avos Yisrael does not require that everybody has to have the same opinion. On the contrary, Chazal tell us, Ein Deoseyim Shavos. Opinions of people are not the same. If opinions of people are not the same, then there is nothing wrong when one has one opinion and the other one has another opinion. And there's one person may be right, the other person may be right. There's certain aspects which one may be right in, there's certain aspects which the other one may be right in. But the fact that difference in opinion should lead to hatred, should lead to the opposite of Avos Yisrael, this is something which is completely undesirable. It says there's a Gemara regarding Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara says regarding Talmidei Chachamim, the Gemara dashens it on the pasuk as Vahiv Basufa. And Chazal tell us that Talmidei Chachamim have differences in opinion, one with the other, and the differences of opinion are in Inyanim of Torah. But nonetheless, how apart they are one from another in Inyanim of Torah, at the same time, there's a tremendous ahava, there's a tremendous love between each and every one of them. So Mamela, the Rebbe is continuing the fact that people, one person thinks one way, another person thinks another way, and we say that this should lead to an Inyan of opposite of Avos Yisrael. This is definitely intolerable and uncalled for. Especially, the Rebbe says, there are those people that have a habit that they enjoy going around and talking that this and this place, there's a machloiken, there's an Indian of a dispute going on here and a disagreement going on here, and they enjoy going around talking about it. they talk about it, they write about it. This is something which is definitely does not give any good. This is something which this does not at all fit into the category of Avos Yisrael. And the Rebbe says, there are those that write letters, and even if they write letters and they wouldn't want to sign their name, they call anonymous letters. This is something which is not acceptable in the Machne Yisrael, in the Jewish camp, such type of an attitude. If two people have a difference in opinion, go ahead, straighten it out. And if the question is where to straighten it out, that is what we have Rabbanim for. And that's the whole union of the Rav. And the Rabbanim should get involved and straighten out when there are differences of opinion, when there are disputes. And the Rebbe says there's a medrash. The medrash tells us that in the creation of the second day, in the creation of Yom Sheni, it is not mentioned Toiv. Every day in the 6 days of creation, it's mentioned Toiv. In the creation of Yom Sheni, it is not mentioned Toiv. Why? Because on that day was a division. And when there is a division, that means an union of Machloika. When there's Machloika, when there's the opposite of Avos Yisrael, the opposite of Achdus, then there is no room for Toiv. And that is why, Takid, on the third day, we all know that the third day, specialty of Tuesday is that in the creation of Tuesday it is mentioned twice Toiv. Toiv la Shamayim, v'Toiv la Briyos. A double type of the good, a good to Shamayim and a good amongst people. So what does this show us? This shows that by Yidden, when there's an union of Pirut, when there's an union of separation, when there's an union of opposite of Achdus, then it cannot allow for Toiv. Toiv can only be when there is unity. We know there's a concept, continues the Rebbe, Beroiv Am Hadras Melech. When there are many people participating in a Dvar Mitzvah, it adds glory to the Melech, glory to the King. However, when somebody goes around and talks about Machloikes and discusses Machloikes and tells other people about Machloikes, and he does that in public, here we do not apply the concept of Roiv Am Hadras Melech. This is no glory to the Melech. On the contrary, this is the opposite of Hadras Melech, when such type of inyanim, when such type of things are carried around. The Rebbe continued in the Farbrengen that today is the third Shabbos from Pesach, and on the third Shabbos of Pesach, that's why we will be reciting today the third Perek of Pirkei Avos. And again, the inyan of 3 reminds us on the creation of Tuesday. Tuesday is the third day, and it's again a reminder, again reiterated the fact that Tuesday is a special day. Why? Because Toiv is mentioned twice. And what's the meaning of twice Toiv? Toiv la Shamayim and Toiv la Briyos. In other words, one who is good to Shamayim and at the same time good la Briyos, good to people. Which this is the same concept of unity, full unity, and that is when we stress the inyan of a double Toiv, of Yom Shehukful Beiki Toiv. From this the Rebbe led into the Rambam Shir, in today's Rambam Shir. We are learning the halachas of Shemitah and Yovel. Shemitah is every 7th year. In Eretz Yisrael, we're prohibited to do field work. And the Rambam and these halachas tells us all of these laws in complete detail. There's also, however, a concept of Shmitas Ksofim. Shmitas Ksofim means there's a Shmita on money. What does that mean? That means if somebody owes money to somebody else, and it comes Shmita, he does not have to pay it. All chayves, all debts are dissolved when it comes Shemitah. So it was in the time of Hillel, and Hillel saw that people were reluctant to lend money one another. Why? Because somebody was afraid that, especially when it came close to Shemitah, why should he lend money to somebody else? He will never be repaid because it will come into Shemitah, and then Shemitah dissolves the chayves, so he will never see his money back again. So Hillel made what is called a pruzbul. A pruzbul is a type of an arrangement which does allow that we should be able to collect the debts even during Shemitah. The Rebbe says, what do we see from this? That Hillel went out of his way and made a takana, made a special setup. And obviously this setup is not for the so-called good-natured person, because the good-natured person, the ideal person who enjoys giving a loan, for him there was no need to make a pruzbul. And nonetheless, as long as there should be achdus amongst Eden, there should be unity amongst Eden and a feeling of helping one another, what did Hillel do? Hillel went and he set up this pruzbul so that people should be able to continue giving loans, and even those people who are afraid, under normal circumstances, would be afraid to give the loan. Nonetheless, the arrangement of the pruzbul led to it that they too would continue giving loans, even it was before Shemitah. And talking about the pruzbul, there's a halacha regarding pruzbul, that who can make a pruzbul, that's a halachic attachment to it, a person who owns karke. He has to own land in order to make a pruzbul. So how do we all make pruzbuls when it comes Shemitah? And the fact that Alter Rebbe, even the Shulchan Aruch, has entered a text, the exact text of the pruzbul, and today it's customary that at the Hataras Nedarim, which we usually do on Erev Rosh Hashanah, so on the Erev Rosh Hashanah before Shemitah, that is when we make the pruzbul. And we all make a pruzbul. So regarding this, it's discussed in Svarim that we apply a concept that every Yid has one Amma, or according to some Svarim, Paiskim has brought out Daled Ames. Everybody has a share of 4 Ames in Eretz Yisrael. Every Yid, even today, even in Golus, wherever we are, it is credited that every Yid, we all have a Shaykhus to Eretz Yisrael, so it's credited as if each and every one of us has in Eretz Yisrael Daled Ames, and so therefore we are considered that we own karka, that we own land, so therefore we are allowed to make the pruzbul. This gives us permission to make the pruzbul. When the Rebbe, there's a taich when the Rebbe was talking earlier about the Mishnah, Istakel b'shloisha dvarim teres perek of Pirkei Avos. Just mentioned it very briefly. Istakel b'shloisha dvarim, look into 3 things. Ve'ein atabol edei avera, and we do not come to an avera. The Rebbe mentioned the taich. What's the inyan of an avera? Avera, which we usually taich as the opposite of a mitzvah, transgressing, going against the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe mentioned the taich, Averos Meloshen Oiver, a person that passes, that goes over. He goes over from one area into another area. If somebody goes from one rishus into another rishus, we would apply the expression, he's Oiver from one rishus to the other. The same, what happens is when a person does an Avera, it's the same thing that happens. But also mentioned briefly about the Sedra which we are in. We're in the Sedra of Pashas Emor. And at the beginning of Pashas Emor we find a double expression. Emor ve'amarta. Emor el HaKoyanim, tell the Koyanim all the laws that are pertaining to Tumah, ve'amarta aleim, and you shall tell them. So Chazal bring to our attention, why is there a double expression of Emor and ve'amarta? And Chazal respond that the Gdolim have to be mazhir diktanim, that hereby the laws of Kahuna, there's special instruction that the adults, the simple meaning of it is that the adults of Koyanim, they have to make sure that even the youngsters of Koyanim also follow these halachas. So the Gdolim have to be mazhir diktanim. So the Rebbe is bringing out of this, and the moral which we can take from this is that everyone, when we're talking about Godel and Cotton, it doesn't necessarily relate to age. Especially when it's explained at Lamp and Siches, Godel and Cotton is something which relates whoever has more knowledge in Yiddishkeit is considered a Godel, as opposed to the person who has less is considered a Cotton. And what are we told here? We are told that it is the responsibility of the Gdolim to make sure, lahazir, to caution the Ktanim, and to make sure that the Ktanim, that we share our knowledge, we share our whatever we have, whatever we possess, we share that with the Ktanim, and make sure that those who are still in a level of cotton should also know exactly what to do. But here the Rebbe brings in a deeper taich. Lahazir does not only mean to warn and to caution. Lahazir is meloshen zoyhav. Meloshen Lichtigkeit, illumination, a spiritual illumination. When the Godel, when one who is at a higher level, dedicates himself to assist the one who is still at a level of Katnus, besides the fact that he's helped another Jew and he's brought out a practice of Avos Yisrael to another Jew, besides all that, the Godel has gained Zihirus, Zohar. The Godel has gained Lichtigkeit. There's a spiritual oil which bestows upon a person who goes ahead and dedicates from his time and his effort and goes ahead and devotes himself to the cotton, to the one who is still at a level of katnus. And that's the taich lahazir gdoilem alaktanim. When the gdoilem are involved in taking care of the ktanim, it adds zohar, it adds lichtigkeit to the godel as a reward for the fact that he has been kind enough to go out of his way and involve himself with the person who's still at a level of katnus in comparison to him. The Rebbe also tied us in, we find the double expression of Emor ve'amarta. This relates to another union which is explained in the Chassidus. In other words, what we have here is two amiros, two sayings. What does this have a shaykhus to? There's another place we find two sayings. There's a pasuk, V'Hashem hem mircha hayoim, that the Rebishter, which is explained by Chazal, the Rebishter has chosen Yidden and made them his chosen chativa, his chosen nation, as the Rebbe mentioned earlier, the expression his am segula, and then it works the other way around. There was another amira. There was an amira from Yidden to the Rebishter, that Yidden have chosen the Rebbeinu Shalom, that he's our master, he's our Rebbeinu Shalom, and to him we will serve. Memela, this double expression of Emor ve'amarta, which we find in our Sedra, reminds us on this V'Hashem ha'marta hayoim, V'Hashem ha'mircha hayoim, which this is also two psukim, which also twice the Indian of Amira, which also relate on the Zugebundenkeit and the relation and the tie, how the Rebishter has chosen Yidden, and the other way around, how Yidden have chosen the Rebbeinu Shalom. Back to the Indian of the Rambam. In the Shir Rambam today, where we learn about the halachas of Shemitah, and tonight's Shir, in other words, Sunday's Shir, is already completing the completion of the halachas that deal with Shemitah. Memela, we are also finishing this Sefer and the Rambam that deals with the halachas of Zroyim. And we are entering the Sefer of Avodah, which tells us all about the Beis HaMikdash. There's, at the end of Hilchos Shemitah v'Yovel, there's a famous halacha in the Rambam, which the Rebbe has spoken about at many occasions. The Rambam here talks about the specialty of Shevet Levi. That Shevet Levi is the Shevet which has been chosen by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to serve him, the Koyanim and the Leviyim. And then the Rambam comes in the very last halach of Hilchos Shemitah v'Yovel, and the Rambam tells us as follows: Loi Shevet Levi bilvad. We're not only talking about Shevet Levi, one who is physically a descendant of the tribe of Levi, Ela kol ish ve'ish, anyone mikol bo ha'olam. That his spirit has volunteered and he has the understanding to go ahead and service HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rambam continues, this type of a person has a sanctity of Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holiness. So what the Rambam actually here is bringing out, that spiritually anybody can really achieve this Madriga of Levi. And as the Rebbe is learning Pshat, it doesn't only mean the Madriga of Levi, but when the Rambam uses the expression Kodesh Kadoshim, we're talking about a Kohen Gadol. Who has a shaykhus to the Kodesh Kadoshim? It's the Kohen Gadol. And what is the Rambam here telling us? That each and every Yid has this unique koyches which the Rebishter has given him, that he can reach out and achieve and reach to the level of Kahuna G'dayla. And then the Rambam finishes with the words of David HaMelech. The Rambam quotes a pasuk. Hashem enos chelki v'koisi. The Rebishter is my share. Ata toimich goyroli. And this Indian of goyrol means a lot. When you choose something, it's called a goyrol. A lot. What does this Indian of goyrol have a shaykhus here? By the Kohen Gadol, which we're talking about, on the holiest day of the year, the holiest person of the year, the holiest person of Klal Yisrael, in the holiest spot in the world, the Kodesh Kadoshim. What was the Kohen Gadol involved in the Avodah of Yom Kippur? The Avodah of Yom Kippur, we learn in Chumash, there was an Indian of making Shnei Seirim, two Geirolis. One Geirol was one korban, one soyer, one of the goats he was makriv as a korban. What did he do with the other goats? That was taken to a desert, and that had to be thrown down from a very high place into a very low place. And this led to forgiveness for Yidden on Yom Kippur. The Rebbe says we see a very special thing in it. There was a goyel, which incidentally, talking about an Indian of the goyel, the Rebbe says it's mentioned in Tshuvas HaGoynim, Tshuvas of the Goynim. If we want to know what type of caliber people the Goynim are, we look into the Hakdam of the Rambam, the preface of the Rambam, to a Sefer where the Rambam relates in the Seder how the Torah was related from Moshe to Yeshua to Zakenim, Nevi'im, and then it went through the generations of the Tanoim, and then the Amoraim, and afterwards were the Goynim. So we know who the Goynim were, that they were right after the closing of Talmud, were the Goynim. So it's brought in correspondence of the Goynim, that when a goyel is made on something, when a lot is something which comes out with a goyel, the Goynim write that the goyel has such a strong effect, just like something which came from Sinai. Goyel is something which is very praiseworthy, something which is very, very strong, very effective. So Mamela, we're talking here about the Kohen Gadol, and the Kohen Gadol was involved in Ato Toimich Goyroli.
Wasn't the Kohen Gadol himself chosen by Gorel?
I don't know. I don't remember. Could be. I don't remember. I don't think so. And even this goat, which was not brought into Beis HaMikdash as a korban, this soyer, but this soyer which was thrown down and killed in an open place, and was sent with a special messenger. We read in the Avodah of Yom Kippur. The Rebbe says we see something very interesting. How was the process of it? First it was uplifted to a mountain. And then from the mountain, then it was thrown down. Was weist das? This shows us something that even in the Ummah, when we come across in Yonim, undesirable in Yonim, what is our reaction? Our reaction has to be that first we have to uplift it. That's the whole inyan of the Avodah of Ishapcha. We uplift it, and then we convert it to Kedusha. And from this part of the Rambam, we are entering into the next part of the Rambam. What is the next part of the Rambam? We are entering the halachas of Avodah that deal with the Kol. The Rambam has a custom that before he begins a new sefer, he usually quotes a pasuk that this pasuk relates to the sefer which he's beginning. And before the sefer Avodah, the Rambam brings a pasuk, Shalu shloim Yerushalayim, yishloyu havoich. Ask for the peace of Yerushalayim. Search for the peace of Yerushalayim. Yishloyu also meloshen shalva, meloshen pleasantness. Oy havoich, those that love you. And this relates to the whole inyan which the Rambam discusses here in the Sefer Karbanos, the Sefer Avodah, which is the Beis HaMikdash and Karbanos. The Beis HaMikdash and Karbanos. First of all, what's the taich? Shalu shloim Yerushalayim. But it brings the Gemara. There's a pasuk, Tzion ein doirish lo. There is nobody that's taking an inquiry, that's inquiring into Tzion. It's a pasuk. So the Gemara says on this pasuk, Michlal de Tzion boy doirish. So from here we see that what we have to do is we have to search after Tzion, we have to search after Eretz Yisrael. In other words, we have to take an interest in Eretz Yisrael. And that's the taich, Shalu shloim Yerushalayim. Ask for the shloim l'shem peace, l'shem shalom of Yerushalayim. But what do we mean when we're talking about Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim, that's shleimus hayira. Yerushalayim is composed of two words. Yirei shalom, the highest level of yira. And here we say, not only that, Shalu shloim Yerushalayim, the completeness, shloim maloshen ganzkeit, maloshen whole and complete, of the completeness of Yira which Yerushalayim has. In other words, a real high madrega in God-fearing. That's the taich of searching after Yerushalayim. What do we mean Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim stands for the highest level of Yerushalayim. And here we say, higher than Yerushalayim, shloim Yerushalayim. And from this level of Shalu Shloim Yerushalayim, we come to a yet higher madrege of Yishloyu Oy Havoich. Chassidus has explained at length that there's the madrege of Yira and there's the madrege of Ahava. Ahava is a higher madrege than Yira. So first we come to the madrege of Shalu Shloim Yerushalayim. Then we go yet higher, Yishloyu Oy Havoich. There's a famous expression, it's a Zohar. Yishloyu Oy Havoich, you will be Meloshen Shalva, Meloshen peace, peace and calm. Oy Havoich, those that love you. Mamela, the Rebbe is teaching. Famous expression which is often quoted in Chassidus, Leis Pulchana ke Pulchana de Chimusa. There's no serving the Rebishter as serving him through love. Chechinu means love in Aramaic. Same as we're talking about here, Ahava. Rebbe brings this expression of Yishloyu. We find the word Shalva. We find it in Rashi and Chumash about Yaakov. Rashi tells us, Bikesh Yaakov leishev b'shalva. Yaakov wanted to sit in peace. Yaakov wanted to sit back and relax. What happened? He didn't work out. He had problems with Yosef and all that. When was he successful in reaching peace? That is when his best years were when he came into Mitzrayim. 17 years. 17 is equivalent to Toiv. The Toiv years of Yaakov's life were his last years, and those were his years in Mitzrayim. What was his Avodah in Mitzrayim? The Avodah in Mitzrayim was the Avodah of his Hapcha. He converted. Mitzrayim is known as Ervas HaOretz. It was the lowest of, spiritually, the lowest of all lands. And what was Yaakov successful in? For bringing Kedusha into Mitzrayim, taking the sparks of Getlichkeit, the sparks of Kedusha that fell down so deep in Mitzrayim, and he elevated them. Once Yaakov was successful in accomplishing that led to Shalva, to peace, to pleasantness in Yaakov's life. The same here, after we've gone through what we discussed earlier at the end of the Sefer of Zroyim. We've gone through the Avodah of Goyrol, Atatoymech Goroli, and even that, as we discussed earlier, that even this soyer, even this goat, which was not brought as a korban, but nonetheless, before it was thrown down, it was uplifted first. What is this stress? The stress is the Avodah of his Hapcha. And after that, we go through the Madrege, first the level of Yira, and then the Yid can come to the Madrega of Ava Yishloyu Havoich. He comes to a Madrega of Ava Bishalva, in a pleasantness, in a Shalva, in a Ruig Dike Ava, which is what the Rambam is referring to. And then the Rambam is starting off the Sefer of Avodah. He starts off about a mitzvah sasei to build a bayis l'Hashem, a house for the Rebishter, and this house should be ready, that their korbanos should be brought. Rebbe says, even al pi halacha, discussed in Gemara, makrivin afal pi she'ein bayis, that the Yidden were bringing korbanos even when they didn't have the Beis HaMikdash, but nonetheless the Rambam here is telling us that the intention of the Beis HaMikdash was that it should be a house where they should be able to have korbanos. And the exact and precise details we have from the Beis HaMikdash of Shloime, and then we also have from the Nevuah in Yecheskel. Talking about Yecheskel, the Rebbe mentions, the Gemara tells us that Nevuah can only be said in Eretz Yisrael. However, Yecheskel was an exception, that he was able to say Nevuah even while being in Chutz La'aretz. Right? Right. Prophecy. And what is the whole idea of the Korban? So the Rebbe here comes to the Inyan, which is explained in Chassidus. Adam, where the Torah talks about korbanos, the Torah uses the expression Adam ki yakriv mikem korban Hashem. A person from amongst you who will decide to bring a korban to the Rebishter, and so and so and so will be the halacha. So there's a famous question which is asked in Chassidus, that the grammar of the pasuk, that the grammar in the pasuk should have been Adam mikem ki yakriv korban Hashem. A person from amongst you who will decide to bring a korban to the Rebishter. Well, the Mikem does not say that way. It says, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban. And what does Chassidus interpret? That this is the whole idea of a kolb. The whole idea of a kolb is that it creates a closeness from the person who's bringing the kolb to whom he's bringing the kolb. And that is, there's a Rabbeinu Bechaya, which is often quoted in Chassidus, that kolb stems from the word kiruv, closeness. And therefore, when a Yid is at a level of becoming close to the Rebishter, he has to know that the kolb is not just the physical kolb, the physical behemoth which he's bringing into the Beis HaMikdash. That is insufficient. He has to know that the kolb has to be brought mikem. From him the kolb has to be brought. It has to be what is required by a kolb is a self-sacrifice from the person who's bringing the kolb. That is why the wording in the pasuk is such, Adam ki yakrev mikem kolb. The kolb has to be from amongst you. In other words, from amongst, from the kolb has to be of you. In other words, it's not just the contribution and the behemoth that going through it, going through the system, going through the process of bringing a kolb. That's insufficient. The kolb comes together with mikem ayidaf makrev zayin. A yid has to sacrifice from himself, and that is the true sense of the kolb. And here the Rebbe went into the inyanim which the Rebbe has spoken about many times, how we have to see to it that every Jewish house has to be suitable to be a Beis HaMikdash. It's every room in the house, and every child's room, and the furniture of a child, and the furniture of the house. Everything has to be at such a level that it has to be worthy of absorbing the Shechina. That's the whole inyan of Beis HaMikdash. V'osu leMishkan, v'osu leMikdash, v'shechanti b'soicham, and we all know famous Chazal, b'soich kol echad ve'echad, amongst each and every one. Memela, when we're talking about a Beis HaMikdash, it's not just the general Beis HaMikdash which was in Yerushalayim. There was the individual Beis HaMikdash. There is the individual Beis HaMikdash which is within each and every one of us. And yet more in detail, every room of every Jewish house and every part of every Jewish house, and same for adults and for children. The Rebbe has spoken at many occasions, stressing how children have to be brought up also in the same way, that they should know that their rooms and their areas, the areas of play, the areas of residence, all have to be such that it should be worthy, so that the Shechina should be able to dwell there.